What's that? I know. Sorry to interrupt conversations. We're going to get going so we can get everybody out of here on a reasonable time. All right, real quick, I just wanted to first say thank you for sticking around. I know post-church meetings aren't always optimal, but it's really the best time to do it to get the most people here. Hey, there may be a lot said over the next few minutes that might bring some questions up for you, and that is perfectly fine. I'd encourage you to write those down because at the end we will do a Q&A where you can ask about anything we've said or anything we haven't said or bring up stuff. That will be an important part just as interaction. So make sure that, we won't have time to answer questions after everything that we say, but save them for the end. We'll come back and we'll chat about those toward the end of the meeting. Right off the top, I want to acknowledge that I believe the last 2 years, as we've gone through COVID, all this stuff, I think it's cost us more than we know. Amen. I think that, I'm getting amens in the post-church meeting too. Thank you, Smitty. I think what we've been through probably has cost us more than what we realize, probably has cost us more than what we know at this point. That'll come more clear down the road. We're people who want to be strong and nothing bothers us, and so we put on that tough, mask and we just kind of work through, not a big deal. But I think it's cost us more than sometimes what we want to admit. And I think the church life, which is very communal in nature, very fellowship-oriented, so much has been taken away from us. And so much, if it's not been taken away, has been reduced. Even when we do gather, we're back to doing some more normal table ministry meetings, discipleship, stuff that's actually in blood, in person. Even when we do gather, some of us gather with these questions in the back of our heads like, should we be here? Like, should we be doing this? Is this safe? Those of us who do choose to get together with people, maybe not everybody, but a lot of us now carry new social anxieties and new worries and new fears, and we don't really meet with the weightlessness that we used to meet. Now we gather and it's a little harder to fully and freely connect with other people. And again, I'm not speaking for everyone, but some of you are going, yeah, that's the case for me. And we have to acknowledge that. I think as the threat of COVID decreases, which I think it will, and it is, we can't pretend like everything goes right back to the way that was. And that's true personally for us. That's true as a church for us. I don't think we just step back in like, okay, that 2 years is over, now we're just going to kick back and do what we were doing before. I think the truth is we are forever changed. I think that about a society. We don't go through a one in every 100-year pandemic and not be changed a little bit. I think that's true for a lot of us as individuals, definitely for a church, that we are forever changed. And I don't think that has to be a bad thing. A lot of us don't like change. But I don't think it has to be a bad thing. But I do think it's a reality that we have to come to terms with. And one of the good things about that is that any of the sacred cows that we have held on to as a church, any of the things that we have to do it because we've always done it that way, we are free to kind of reevaluate at this point. We have a chance to look to the future and to build the future we want to build as a community and to become who we want to become. We have a chance to try new things. We have a chance to explore how we can be faithful to Jesus in new ways as a community. We don't have to hold on to the way that we've always done things because the truth is nothing has been normal over the last 2 years. And so I think we all have to see this as an opportunity to restart. In fact, in some ways, I believe we should treat this time now that we are heading into almost as a church plant. An entirely new church in some ways. Of course, we have a lot of people who have been here a long time, but in some ways, a new church exploring our calling to be faithful to Jesus in Muncie, within our time and our place and our community. And one thing every successful church plant needs, no matter if it's just kicking off or it's 15 years in and kind of reevaluating everything, one thing every successful church plant needs is passionate people toward what we are doing and toward the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is true when we started this church 16 years ago today or whatever it was, as it is today. If we have passionate people for what we're doing, we're going to serve God well. And if we don't, we won't. if you've been here a while and you feel like, man, we've just been in this time, maybe a long time for you, where something seems a little off and we just don't have, it's not the same as it was, and we don't really have kind of a clear direction. And, I talked to somebody who's a little newer to the church this week, and they said, we like it. Something seems we're not sure what it is. If you've been feeling that way, you're not the only one. In fact, I was feeling that way long before COVID, that we're just missing some sort of direction or purpose or identity or something. And COVID has just made that all the worse, because instead of me trying to work with people to figure out who are we, what does Christ want from us here in Muncie, we've just been keeping our heads above water for 2 years, trying to figure out, do we wear masks, do we not wear masks, can we meet, should we not be meeting, and carrying the heaviness of this whole thing. So it's just made the whole process, I think, longer and more difficult. I mean, we're still gathering for weekly worship, right? We're still doing good work in the community. We've added some new things. Our discipleship program has been, I think, a huge success that Carl's been leading. We've added new staff, Kelly leading Bridge Kids and Allison leading youth, and they've been doing phenomenal jobs. We've had Keith in here leading worship. So all that stuff's going great, and yet I still feel like there's more, something, a step, whatever it is, that we're just missing at this moment. And I can't tell you what it is. Is it a location? Is it a vision? Is it a direction? Is it an energy? Is it me? Like, am I the problem or a problem right now for this community? You guys have no idea how many times I've kicked that around and wondered that. I haven't been able to put my finger on it, but as I've said, like, COVID has just made all of this last a lot longer than I wanted it to. This kind of figuring out who we are. All churches go through this. This is kind of a cyclical thing for churches. You have to reevaluate after a decade, or so. It's just been a long time. But I do think there's a time coming where we have the opportunity here in the next year or so to ask ourselves some new questions, some hard questions, and to treat all of this as an opportunity to start anew. This group of people that we call the Bridge Community Church, some have been a part of this for a little while, some have been a part of this for many, many years. We have an open future in front of us, and we get to explore it without having to hold on to any past. And I think that's a good thing. And I don't know what it's going to look like, where it's going to lead us, but what I do know is we need passionate people to help us to get there. So this morning, I want to start off with a challenge to you. As we look to the future together, the more of us that can invest into wherever this leads, to be open, but to invest our time, our energy, our attention, our resources, to make this all a priority, to play whatever role you can play, to say, God, where do you want this group of people to go? And what do you want us to do? I've changed a lot since we've began this church, but one thing that has always been the same, I've always said this, and some of you have been with us a long time, you remember day one I said this, I would rather have 50 passionate people who are selling out to the gospel than 500 who show up for a weekly service and then go on their way. That still is true today, and the reason I bring that up is it's always the numbers I've used, 50 and 500. And we're about 50 right now, a little more so, but we can do a ton of good work in this community. Amen. And if God desires us to grow, great. Like in numbers, that'd be awesome. I'm open to that. And if God doesn't, that's okay too, because we can do amazing kingdom work if this group of people is focused and on the same page, and we move together into the future. Today we're going to hear about some changes that are already kind of shaping, I think, the future for us as a post-COVID community. Some of them are bigger and some of them are smaller, but they're all bits of changes that we wanted to kind of update you guys on. The reason we have this meeting is just to be open and transparent on conversations that we're having at all different levels. And I still don't have a ton of clear direction on kind of big picture, who we're supposed to be, where we're supposed to go, our identity. But I do think some things are changing, and I see some new people stepping up in some big ways, and I'm excited. I am excited, kind of for the first time in a while, about the future that lies in front of us, because I think there's some really good work to be done. I heard somebody arguing a few weeks ago that they believe there's a golden age of community getting ready to happen, largely because of COVID, but because we're realizing we need each other. I hope that's true. I don't know if it's true, but if it's true, I want to be a part of that, and the church needs to be a part of that. A golden age of community for the Bridge, where we begin to know each other more fully and freely, where we're committed to each other's lives and our walks with Christ, and we're on a path of discipleship, and we're serving in the community. And people know us not because we're so great, because the God that we serve is great. Like, that's a pretty cool thing. And that's where I want us to go. I hope you can join me in finding that excitement and opening yourself up to say, okay, God, what role do I play in the future of this church? Because I think we all can play a role. And I'm excited for it. Let me start off by sharing one change that's getting ready to take place. And it's not going to change a whole lot from what a lot of you see all the time, but it is a change. As many of you know, since Shad was our last worship leader, how many months ago did you step out? Okay, end of September, Shad stepped out of that role, and he's still been gracing us with his musical abilities from time to time and leading worship. But since then, we've said, okay, we need a new worship leader, somebody that can be up here, right? And, Keith stepped in pretty quickly as our interim, and he's been here, and he's been doing a phenomenal job with the music. And we've had another applicant. Josh Gustin was in here a few times leading, and he was officially applying for that job as well. But while Josh was applying for that position, a new conversation came up where we said, should we be hiring the same position that we've always hired? You know, we get a person, they come in here, they do all the work. By the way, the worship job is not just leading on Sunday mornings. It's all the organizing, the communicating, the chord charts online, putting everything in, making sure, the rehearsals are going well, all that stuff. It's more than what you see on a Sunday morning. And what we realize is there's two parts of that worship job. There's the back end and the front end. The front end is what we all see on a Sunday morning, but all the back end work that goes into it is a little more tedious. And honestly, if you're somebody who's like an artist musically, that stuff can like eat your soul. And it's really why a lot of our musicians, you guys might remember Brian Ashmore. I think Brian really struggled with that part of it. And just the back end work it takes a lot of time and a lot of focus, and it's not everybody's skill set. So we said, why do we need to hire, just like we always have, one person to do all of that and we pay him a crappy salary? What if we could pay him a more crappy salary, but we give them less work to do? And they say, the light bulb went off, right? So here's what we are going to be trying on an interim basis. We are going to be hiring at half that salary a back-end person who will handle all of the planning center, which is our, all of the charting, the organizing, the communicating. And then the other half of the salary, we're going to break up into basically ad hoc payments for whoever leads worship that morning. That might be Keith, that might be Shad, that might be Jill, it might be Nathan Persinger, who you guys have gotten to know a little bit through here. It might be somebody you've never met before. But we will have kind of rotating people come in to lead worship. And I think that's cool because we get different styles. And we get to have other people express their talent and they can come in. We could become a hub for people who have the gift for leading worship but no outlet to do it. We think that's a pretty cool thing. So we're going to try this. Questions at the end, Adam? Okay, you can ask them. Yeah. I have a tape. Oh, okay, yes. Next week, you're on. We need a tape deck, though. But otherwise, yes, just like that. Just anybody. That is a good point. We are not going to be a hub for people who have never led worship but just want to give it a shot, right? There will be some vetting going on here, okay? Yes, we can laugh about that. But just let me wrap this up. Keith is going to be on an interim basis because Keith really kind of thrives in that back-end work. He's a great communicator. He knows people so well. He can communicate with people very well. He knows the people's strengths and their gifts that are in our community. So Keith is actually going to be on an interim basis, filling in that back-end role. You'll still see Keith from time to time up here filling in. But his main job, starting in April, is going to be making sure that whoever's leading has everything already lined up. They can come in on a Sunday morning and use their gifts to lead worship and not have to be like so worn down from all the other stuff that you have to do throughout the week. Does that make sense? So you're going to be seeing some new faces. A lot of them are going to be familiar, to you, but you may see a new face here and there. You may not see Keith up as much as you have been, but Keith is going to be involved. And Keith's wife works at Union Chapel, so he won't be here every Sunday morning, but he's going to be in here some Sundays. And we're excited to try this because we think it just plays to strengths a little bit better. So we're going to try that in April. And if you have any questions on that, write them down. Keep them for the next little bit. Few other worship or ministry updates. that we're going to work through real quick. Carl, do you want to go ahead and come on up? Carl's going to share with you what he's been doing discipleship-wise and through his Bible study.
Hello, I'm Carl. Hi, thank you. Hi, Tristan. So I am Carl Smith. I am over discipleship in general, and which is kind of an odd thing. I teach a discipleship class, but I don't want to think of discipleship as a class. It is a lifelong pursuit of following Jesus. That is something that I'm very passionate about and want to facilitate in our body. We have a group going through a discipleship class right now, so don't ask about that. You can ask in 6 months or so when I invite you to join again. But I do have a Bible study that I teach every other Wednesday. So every 2 weeks, we go through a chapter. Right now we're in Gospels. We are just finishing up Matthew. We have one chapter left. It'll be wonderful. And then we're going to start right in with Mark. We are going to be talking about Jesus for years to come. You know, we've got a few years left of Gospels, and maybe we'll start again after that. I don't know. But I will say I would love to see more of you there. The group that we have is wonderful. Communication has been really great. Discussion, learning. The Spirit moves in our group, and we are getting to know Jesus better. And I want more of you to get to know Jesus better. It's a really cool thing. There's really no reason not to do it. I am very passionate about Jesus. I like to put my time into knowing him better and then help share that with people whose jobs aren't to get to sit and learn about Jesus. But I have that. That's a resource. I'm a resource, and I want to be able to spend that time with you guys. That will be, Mark will be starting in 3 weeks-ish. So if you don't want to jump into the tail end of the story, you can start brand new with Jesus as a little bitty baby here in a couple weeks, and we can talk about him, go through all of his life and story, and learn and grow together as a body. I'm very excited about it. I would love to talk to any of you more if you have any questions about that. Like I said, we'll be starting Mark in about 3 weeks. And yes, thank you. That doesn't matter. You guys will figure it out. Thank you, exactly. We are actually meeting in this room on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. We go 7:15, 7:30, somewhere around that. So, but just every other Wednesday, we're here at 6 o'clock. And yeah. Yeah.
Some of you may or may not know when Carl joined staff 2.5-ish years ago, 2 years ago, something like that. Carl agreed to raise his own salary, at least partially. And so if you value what Carl does, we would really, I know they would appreciate it, but if you want to support him financially, a lot of times in churches that's what we have to do. That doesn't mean I'm going to take what I'm giving from the church and give to Carl, because that doesn't help us at all. But to help him, if anybody wants to do like $10 a month, $20 a month to support Carl, he'd really appreciate that, and that'd go a long way. And he wouldn't say that, but I'm going to say that. So thank you, Carl, for everything you do. Appreciate it. Allison Inman, would you come on up? She is our new youth pastor as of a few months ago. Who knows? Time is totally irrelevant these days. But tell us what you've been doing.
So we have been meeting, since January now, I think, every other week. And how that looks for us is just after worship, we all come together. And I didn't plan it this way, but we always start with a game now because I have some really shy ones that I had to break the ice with first. So we play a game for a little bit, breaks the ice, it gets us a little more comfortable with each other. Sometimes that lasts a little too long, but that's okay because I feel like that's where those relationships are built, and that's where we're really able to get to know each other and create that family basis that I'm really striving for still. Right after our game, we split into 2 groups, and depending on who we have, teens-wise, we are boys and girls or middle schoolers and high schoolers, and usually Christopher gets the big ones, and I get the little ones. Lately, it's been you get the boys, I get the girls, but and then we always, in those groups where we're split up, we do what's called highs, lows, and buffaloes, and this really just allows them to open up and share something without being like forced into it. So they share a high, which is something that's really awesome that's happened to them the last couple of weeks, something they want to praise God for, something that they're just excited about and want us to celebrate with them about. And then a low is usually something that's like a bummer or something that we put on our prayer requests that we pray for later. And then our buffalo ends up usually just being Julia telling us how many times she fell in the past week. Or all of us opening up the video of her on the treadmill. That one's really great too. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It's amazing. And then we all come together as a whole group, and that's where we share our lesson. And I have been scheduling my lessons based upon what Josh is preaching, and I'll take what he taught the last week plus what he's teaching the next week, and creating something that they can be using that is a verb for the following week, a goal. How can they be utilizing this and mobilizing this in their lives? This past couple weeks, they had to actually open up and read some scripture on their own at home, which I don't know that any of them, I'm not gonna say any of them. I know some of them have never done that before. So just getting them into the habit of actually opening up a Bible, a physical Bible at home and reading it and seeing how it applies to their life. And then we talked about it today, and now I gave them, for the next time we meet, they have a couple more chapters to read. But this past week it was John 17 and 18, and then today you still talked about sacrifice today, right? Okay, right? Yeah, okay. I want them to stay kind of in the same consistent routine. Since we are in here every other week, I don't want them to be completely blindsided I want it to just stay kind of consistent, so we're all kind of learning on the same base there. And what else? Oh, one thing that we have started doing that's been really awesome is this stemmed from your sermons on if we want to experience God. These are the things we have to do. So every week I'm asking them, how did you experience God this week? So it's really making them search for God and look for God in their everyday lives, even in the littlest things. So that's been pretty awesome to hear what they think was God in their day, and that's pretty exciting. So anything else? That's pretty much it, right? There's a gist of it. It's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. So
Thank you, Allison. And honestly, thank you, Chris. I know that when you're a spouse and you got a spouse in ministry, you just kind of get pulled into a lot of it, and I appreciate what you do. Good. Thank you. And we're glad we hired you. You're great. Thank you, Allison. Kelly Smith. Kelly Smith is our Bridge Kids, and she's going to share what's going on in the Bridge Kids.
Hey, everybody. I'm just sharing what's going on. I'm sorry, I missed the directions. Okay. Yeah, so in Bridge Kids right now, we are talking about Lent, just as you guys are. And we're talking about different aspects of Jesus' life and different like qualities that are just, important things to know about Jesus. Like today we talked about miracles and how Jesus performed miracles. And the big miracle of Easter, which is, there you go, resurrection. So we're just kind of talking about different parts of Jesus, his different qualities, and then tying them into Easter. So we're just doing that in the weeks leading up. That's what we're doing right now. Then we're going to hop back into the year-long curriculum that Christina had kind of started right before I jumped in. I do want to finish that out, so we should finish that, I think, in the summer, and then we'll just kind of go from there. I am kind of learning as I'm going. I'm really enjoying it so far. Really, really grateful for all the flexibility that parents have given and shown. I know it's really confusing a lot of weeks, and you come in and kids are here, now they're there, now they're there, they're in worship, they're not in worship. A lot of this is contingent on volunteers and whether or not we have enough people to be with the younger kids or someone to be with the elementary class. And so like today, we just didn't have enough people, so we had to combine. So I really appreciate your flexibility on that. If you feel led to help out and volunteer, please come see me. I've got a big hug for you. But yeah, that's basically what's going on with kids ministry. If you have any questions, concerns, suggestions, things you've seen in the past that you would like to see back, I would love to hear about those things from anyone. Thank you, guys.
All right, I'm going to invite Brian Riggins up. Brian is a part of our finance team, and he's going to just quickly give you kind of a financial overview of the church, where we are, where we're trending, and all that stuff. So please help me to welcome Brian.
Good morning. I have a few slides, which they're very exciting, I know. So let's just get right into it. Okay, so over the last few years, this is just where we have been as far as our giving and what our expenses are, and where we end up, the difference of those two. So as you can see, going back to 2017, we were a little bit in the red for a few years, and then at the end of 2020, we ended up with a little bit more in our bank account than we started with. So in response to that, we started increasing this column here, this charitable giving. So you can see the percentage of our total revenues, our offering, where we were giving, and it jumped up quite a bit here to 8.2%, and we'd like to see as high as possible, obviously. That you can see we gave a little bit more than we had a little bit more left, in our bank account, if you would, at the end of the year. So we're working to increase that more. So so far, this is just through the beginning of where we are today. We have given more than ever. 15%, and I don't expect that to continue for the whole year, but there were a couple opportunities that came up for us to give. So that is a little bit elevated. It'll flatten out as we go along. Hopefully it'll be around 10% at the end of the year. So next slide. This is there's a lot going on here, but 12 months, the last 12 months, we average about a little bit less than $13,000. So that's what ends up in our offering and what we spend every month. And the expense includes charity, what we give away. The top line here is our bank statement at the end of the month. So every month I balance our checkbook, and you can see the last 3 times we have had a little bit less each month, the 372 and then 1440, 1493. So we have a trend going down a little bit as far as our checkbook at the end of the month. And this line down here just shows you the difference. So the red line is what we are spending, and then the green line is what we are taking in. So the green line is falling a little bit lower than it has been for the last, the past 12 months. So just a FYI where we are with the bank statements. And as far as where we spend our money, where does it go? This is the pie chart. So you can see that the top one here, the payroll and the tax, everybody on staff, all the taxes we pay the IRS, everything we have to pay. So kind of a fixed cost. Then our charity is number 2. This is over the last 12 months, so it doesn't equal exactly what the last chart did. But over the last 12 months, we're right at 10%, which is good. Worship, leading, sound, and subscriptions. I didn't break this one down a whole lot, but it's the next category, and that includes our subscriptions. So we have a few subscriptions that we pay for each year: Subsplash, Zoom, Planning Center, our website. Song Select, we have to pay for the rights to use our music. So there are several things that make up that line. And then also if we do things in this room, like Christmas decorations will be included in there. Then First Impressions, that's our donut and coffee ministry, and then children's ministry, and you can see the items get less and less as we go down. But as a snapshot, that's where we spend our money. So moving on to the charitable part. This is the big blue bars are dollar amounts over the years. It would match this first chart that I showed. So you can see how we were kind of trending down, and then we had a big jump for last year that ended up being about 8% of everything. So this is this year so far at 15%. And I have a few more slides to detail where we give for charity. So over the last 12 months, we've given away almost $16,000 to our community. The top bar, the yellow bar, ad hoc, there's a lot of things that go in that bar, and I have another slide to show you what that is. But these four are our main, the main people that we give our money to. This is a monthly gift. These are all set up as a monthly gift. The Better Way, Youth for Christ, Tree Fort, and Muncie Mission. So as far as the big yellow bar, this is where this $7,500 goes. So groceries, rent, and utilities. If someone in the community calls and asks for help, they call Josh and say, hey, I've got a client that is late on their electric bill, and they're going to, get shut off if we don't help them. We give them money. If we have somebody that needs groceries, if they need a new bed, these kind of things go in this yellow bar. And then Destiny Rescue, the Afghan relocation, thank you, $1,000. So you can see what those are. Those are the details of everywhere that we give. We give a lot of smaller amounts of money that add up to a lot, which this is a very important slide for me. I love this giving to the community slide. Next up, so just as the upcoming expenses, we have improved our sound system here with getting rid of the monitors and getting the in-ear systems, which is a big improvement for the sound team, the band. I know that they really appreciate that, and it makes it sound much better. And then the insurance premium was not included from February, so this year we just paid it on the credit card, and it'll come due in the March statement. But those are so substantial amounts. I just wanted everybody to be aware we have a few more expenses coming in. So if anybody has any questions about any more details, I can help you out.
Great, that's it. Thank you, Brian. We always just want to encourage you. Financially, we've done well over the pandemic, and that's been a huge source of comfort because a lot of churches have not. But always reanalyzing, what we give and continue to challenge you guys to give consistently, because so much of that money does go back out into our community, but also helps us to breathe in other areas as well. And so we'd like to see that 2022 trend move back up. And anytime you have questions, as Brian said, about finances, we want to be very transparent on that. You can talk to him. He's got all kinds of charts he can show you. They're riveting. They're amazing. Brian has been amazing. Brian has been very good to get things together for us, so thank you. All right, one more person we're going to hear from before we do Q&A, and this is kind of one of the bigger changes that's going to be happening at the Bridge soon, and we're going to invite board member Jason Harrington up to share with us.
Thank you, Josh. Just an idea, Brian. Your charts and graphs are very energizing to me because I'm a finance guy. But could we put those in the newsletter? All kidding aside, those are really hard to see where I was sitting. Probably really hard to see where you're sitting. So, I think it'd be helpful for people to see that. If we could put that as a PDF or something on the newsletter this week, then people could maybe be able to digest it a little better. Maybe ask better questions too. Josh said, my name is Jason Harrington. I've been on the board, 5 years, give or take. There's a handful of us on the board, myself, Josh, Carl, Jamie. I thought Brian was on the board, but you called him on the finance, but he's on the board too. Yeah, that's why. He's always at the board meetings. And then Rick's a part of the board member. And so, the board gets together every 6 weeks or so, maybe 2 months, just depends on the timing and the topics. And a lot of the things that go into, for example, the report that Brian just gave us require decisions, sort of the business of the church. And that's really kind of what the board has been challenged with, is kind of help lead the business of the church. So whether that's something that's risk management oriented, like, hey, what are we going to do about COVID? And are we going to meet? Are we not going to meet? Those kinds of decisions that are sort of for the better good of the community, right? We sort of got together and made those decisions and sort of helped Josh guide us through that. A lot of financial decisions, like, hey, are we going to increase giving to parties that, to the monthly support that Brian just took us through, right? Like, who makes that kind of decision? Well, the board has traditionally made that kind of decision. And a lot of churches function this way. Stacy and I started a church with another group of people years ago, and it was organized in a very similar fashion, where we had a senior pastor who was kind of like the spiritual leader of the church, and surrounding that person was a board of servants that kind of helped that person lead through business things and that sort of stuff. And so that's a pretty Acts-centric definition of the church, and you can go study that if you want, and that's kind of how churches generally grow up. And usually when a church gets to be a certain point in time, and I don't know what the definition of the point in time is, because from my limited experience, it just depends on kind of what's going on in the church. But long story short, there's another concept that's very scriptural called eldership. And for those of you who have not studied that or don't know what I'm talking about, you can spend some time in Timothy, some time in Titus. But the scripture is really clear about there becomes a point in time where a church kind of needs to graduate into a structure that's a little bit different than the one that we're in today, and this concept of eldership. And eldership really is this idea of leaders within the church who are called to a spiritual level of leadership that is different than the business leadership that we've kind of traditionally described ourselves as. And so that's an issue we've been wrestling with as a board for quite a while, probably over 7 or 8 months, talking pretty in depth about it, frankly, having healthy debate and disagreement, which is what you want a board of directors to do. I'm on like 7 or 8 boards. Everybody wants me to be on a board. I'm still not sure why. But I'm on a lot of boards, and that's a really important characteristic of a board, so know that your board is actually having that happen, and that's a good thing. But we've kind of been wrestling with this topic for a long time, because it's going to be different, right? But the thing that happened in the last board meeting, which was about 3 weeks ago, is that we got to a unanimous position where we all agreed that this is a necessary next step for the bridge. So that means a couple of things, I think, for all of you, and that is, first of all, we'd love for you to be praying for kind of how that rolls out. And it's not a scary thing. It's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. It's an important thing, I think, to have a group of leaders called to be really focused on the spiritual health of the body, and then not just be all on Josh's shoulders or Carl's shoulders, right? That that burden's carried by a lot of folks. Not everybody that's a board member will be an elder. I will speak for myself personally. I mean, I've been through this crossroad twice now, and I do not feel called, and I didn't feel called before, and I didn't choose to do it before, and I don't feel like unless something changes, will be called this time as well. And if you go study Titus and you go study Timothy, you'll understand what I mean when I say it's a calling, and there's just some really specific instruction about what that really means for you as a person to be in that role, right? And so I would encourage you to study that, because some folks in this body are going to be called to be an elder as a result of this. It's just, that's the way God works, right? And so that's a good thing. It's an exciting thing. The thing that we're still wrestling with, that we don't have answers for today, and you can ask, and I'll tell you we don't have answers for later, and that is we don't really know exactly how this eldership will coexist with what we call the board today. That's the thing we're trying to wrestle with right now. Yeah, I've been through a lot of organizational change in my professional career. I've led a lot of companies, taken them through radical changes between what it used to be and what it is today. And one of the most important things you have to do during that transformation is you have to kind of establish the ground rules, right? You kind of have to say, when we have to make a decision about something, here's how we're going to do that. Who has the decision right on that topic versus this topic versus the other? To give you a simple example, in this world, at some point in the future, the eldership will come to us and have a faith-led sort of this faith-led decision or direction that they're going to want to take the church in. That's pretty normal. And this business group is going to be the group that says, hey, That's great. We have the resources to go this far. So if we need to go over here, then we have to do something different than what we're doing today, right? And there's that sort of give and take between those two groups that have to be sort of aligned to be able to understand that. That's the stuff we're working on right now, is like, how's that really going to work in practice? And we're using examples. And the example we've used for the most part is sort of this idea of a building. Well, gosh, what happens in a year or two when somebody says we need to have a building, and that's the right calling, that God's driving us in a direction? We have a certain amount of funds. We have a limited amount of funds. Brian just shared them with you, right? That means how much of a building can you own, and so on and so forth. And so that also may mean that somebody in the body gets called up and things happen, right? Financial situations change. God can change any of those things. So just working through the ground rules is kind of what we're doing right now. And so it's an exciting time. It's something that I think it's a change that, frankly, I think we're ready for. We need to have happen. And whomever this other group of elders is that kind of gets called up and put in that position, I certainly excited to see kind of where they're going to help us grow and lead to. And so that's the big sort of news piece that Josh asked me to share. And I don't know if you want to just go into Q&A, or if you want me to stay up here, or how you want to do this.
Thank you. Will you guys help me thank Jason for sharing that? Eldership is just, if you notice, when we started, it was Josh as CEO. Like, that's how our church was planned, where I had, like, basically way too much power and way too much authority. And then eventually we brought in this board around me to kind of delegate a little bit more. And now this is kind of that next step in that progression of having a group of people specifically seeking God's direction for our church together. And as Jason said, not everybody is called to that type of ministry. Just as, when we're in the board meetings, you should see Carl and I for like 80% of the conversation. We're just like, and because we don't feel called to be in that sort of meeting, because we're not business people at all, but it just felt like there were two different conversations that need to be had to help lead our church. And so we will be, over the next several weeks, trying to identify a group of elders. And who knows, you may be identified in that group. If not, this time around, maybe in the future, I don't know. But that's going to be a big change that's going to help figure out who is the identity of this church and where are we going and what do we have to do to get there. And then we still have all those people on the board who can help, us do all the practical matters that we don't know how to do because, yeah. So I don't know. Hopefully that is clear on what we're doing. And if it's not, over the next few minutes, we just want to kind of open things up. We've talked about the worship position. We've talked about all these other ministries, the finances, kind of this change of eldership, which may not seem big right now, but trust me, this could be some big, big changes coming in the future for us. You might have questions on things we haven't even touched or want to mention some concerns. Gosh, we've been through a lot, and it's been a couple years since we've actually had one of these. So I want to open up the floor, and if you have a question, please don't be afraid to ask it, and we'll do our best to answer that. And I may call on other people to help me answer questions too. It may not just be me. So, Tristan. He left. Yeah, he left the church. Yeah, he's done. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, and I really think that was one of the situations where COVID just threw everything off, and that probably got put on the back burner, but that would be a Carl question, but it's a good one. Oh, hi, Carl. You just had a question. Tristan was asking, we had mentioned during our first discipleship run-through about eventually starting something like a Discipleship 2.0 or something that kind of gets that group back together, or anybody that wants to kind of continue that journey. And I told him, I know that COVID threw all of our scheduling off, but you've also started the Bible study. I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to speak to toward that. And if you do you need something? Oh, great. Thanks, Mike.
Well, great timing. The kids are crazy. So, no. Currently, the Bible study is standing in as the if you've gone through discipleship and you want to continue, and also as an opportunity for those who are currently in discipleship to be able to do additional study, kind of shifting the way that teaching goes around. I'm kicking around an idea of doing some summer classes, and maybe Josh and I sharing that load and some other voices coming in too. But right now, the current organization is running discipleship and then a focus study of the Gospels right now. So, but which is something that anybody can jump into at any time.
Thank you. Hope.
Well, so I have two. One is maybe sort of Carl. So on that line, like we have the Bible study, which meets on Wednesday, and occasionally we do a book study, but if Wednesday is a terrible day for you, what other opportunities can you foresee us having if we want to jump in on some stuff if a Wednesday doesn't work? And one of the things, like me personally, I enjoy those book studies, so I know you don't always do them, sometimes you do them. Is that something we can be a little more intentional about and more routine with, if we can kind of look at the year and say, oh, we want to, yeah, like home teams, you know, now that things are settling back down. So that's one question, but then I have another kind of question, comment. Do you want them both, or do you want to answer that? Okay, the other is, however you want to do worship is fine with me. My only kind of concern is the more people we have, are those people going to be engaged in our community? Because I do think that that's really important. So.
To your first question, yes. I think that my goal is to have maybe 2 or 3 like home teams running throughout the year, so we have more opportunities on more nights to get involved with that. So that is my hope. Your second question for the worship, we did talk about that. We don't want it to feel like there's a guest worship leader every single week. The vast majority of people who will be up here will be a part of our community. That won't be the case every single Sunday, but yeah, it's not going to be like this is our 4th straight week of 4 different people and we don't know any of them. That's not ever going to be the case. We just have enough people in-house that can lead that you're going to see. It's really not going to be a huge difference outside. Then maybe once a month you're going to recognize somebody new, but then that person won't be new for very long. You know, you'll get to know them as well. But yeah, there's limitations because a lot of those people will be involved in other church communities. They just can't lead worship there for whatever reason. Maybe they want an outlet here. So good question. That was a concern of mine as well, is I didn't want this to feel like a completely foreign group every single week up here. Well, we
Mike's finally found his call. Give me an open microphone. Is that a good idea? That's the first question right there. I'm involved in pastoral care at the building where I live, and it's quite the task, daunting even. And I just wondered if there would be opportunity for me to get resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we discussed this somewhat, but I just kind of want to make sure it was.
Yeah, I think this church has to support anybody. We all have circles of influence. You've got your circle of influence. And if you came to me and said there's ministry opportunity, which we've already talked about, in this area, how can we support you to do ministry in that area? That might mean us being there, may not mean us being there, but what resources can we empower you with? That's true for everybody in here. Obviously, we have limited resources, but if you've got an area that you're like, I can like share the gospel in this area, how can my church support me? That is a legitimate question. And one that we should be able to say, hey, here's some resources and time and energy that we can put into that. So it's a great question. It's a good reminder for everybody. Our church needs to be a hub of more ministry happening in the community. Smitty's recognized, hey, I got a building where ministry can happen. I think that's a great thing for all of us to look through that lens. Well, yeah. All right. All right, anybody else? Rachel?
I just want to know how many times Julia fell this week.
Actually, she got a skateboard and she didn't fall once on it. I'm actually pretty impressed with her.
Other questions about anything? The what?
Hello. I have a question since Jason brought it up. If are we looking at any buildings or changing to a different location? Is that anything that's in the near future?
That's a great question. Nothing solidified. I think we've started to say to ourselves, it might be time for us to have a more stable worship place, or a place where we can worship. Whether that means buying or renting or looking, we don't really know, but we have, brought up that it's just easier to do ministry when you have a space to do ministry in. We know there's cost that comes along with that, and we're not a big budget church, so whatever, comes our way would have to make sense for us. But I would say this, I think we are open in the future to a specific building if it should come up, or an opportunity in some ways. And that's really, we haven't had any further discussion on, here's the steps we're taking, here's what we're going to do. It's basically been, okay, is that something we're called to in the future? We're starting to think, that might be. And that's part of the reason we're developing this eldership. I think that's an elder question, honestly, because, we're dealing with where you do ministry, how you do ministry, the neighborhood you do ministry in, what the building. Obviously, the board has to be involved in that because there's a lot of technical stuff. But I think that's a question that once we develop the eldership, one of the first questions that we will have to tackle.
Okay. One reason that I brought that up, there has been concern, some of us ladies have talked about it. We have some people that it's getting harder for them to access to get up here.
Yep.
And, it's, there's no way that you can get in here without having to climb steps. Some people have upper respiratory issues. Some people have knee problems, heart problems. And so it's just something, that with this building, there's just no way to get up here without having to climb steps.
Yep. I think in the short term, one thing we need to look into is utilizing the elevator that's not the elevator, but the lift that's on the back of the building, because you can't get to this room without coming up some stairs. There's just no way. So if we could utilize that lift that takes you into the colonnade room, you could. So we'll have that conversation with Cornerstone, see if they'll allow that. That's a short-term fix, but long-term, I think you're right. We need a space that's easier for people to access. Thank you for bringing that up. So, So, whatever space that we would ever choose to be in, we have to consider tear down and set up, and hopefully, we need a permanent space. Now, whether, again, we're buying or renting, I don't mean we have to own it, but we're not in the space right now where we can do tear down and set up every week. I don't think we have enough manpower to actually, or woman power to pull that off. So any space I think that we do get, I think it has to be a place where we can set up and stay set up. And there's always going to be a little stuff on Sunday morning, but it doesn't have to be like chairs and all that stuff. So, I think it's a no-go if it's a rented space where we have to do all the setup. Mike.
I have a question. It kind of goes along with that. So with Cornerstone, have we gotten any updates from them on their financial situation? Because I know that they were in a place where there were talks of closing, and then we would kind of be in a weird position.
I haven't heard anything. So, I know they were in a tight financial position, and I was like, are we just going to get news that the doors are going to be closed one Sunday? But I think it's been one of those, maybe I've been scared to ask, but no, I have not asked. I'm a great leader. God will provide. Probably another question I need to ask them. I'll ask that along with the lift. Tristan, did you want to do a quick little poll?
So Josh and I have been talking about. Sorry, I figured I was loud. Am I not loud enough for the thing? Oh, okay. Sorry. So Josh and I had been talking about. I was listening to a podcast, and it was just kind of like raising children, where it started, where it is now, like things like that. One of the things is like the phrase "it takes a village." Like, that comes from somewhere. Like, children used to be raised by everyone in their village. Our villages have gotten a lot smaller. And so I was asking him, he said that he didn't think that we could do it yet. We have a lot more things to figure out before offering this. But I just wondered who would be interested in, like, a parenting class. as a 26-year-old with a 15-year-old daughter, I don't feel like I have the tools or capability to do most of that. So if I could lean on people who have had 15-year-olds and things like that, I just wanted to kind of get some hands, like, is anyone interested in that at all? I don't. If I could borrow a copy, that would be phenomenal. But, so, I don't know, we don't know who would be leading it. We don't know.
Yeah, we'd have a lot. I'd say even before, we try to get, I don't want anybody to get discouraged. I think there's a lot of people, depending on the details, could be interested in this. But I think we just want to put that on your radar that, Jill and I had a pretty tough parenting moment this week where I'm like, I need people. I need to figure out how to handle this, right? And so it is to take a village. It takes church, in a lot of ways. And so even people that already have kids that are adults, you guys might be like, we have some advice, like my mom's like, just whip them.
Amen.
Yeah. Beat them senseless. When Tristan brought that up, I told him, yeah, it's got to get put on the back burner because we have these other conversations. But that's a really intriguing idea to me because I have kids and I'm scared to death of the teenage years, and you got thrown right into it. So consider that. And if you're somebody who's like, yes, I want that, I could help that, or I need to benefit from that, talk to Tristan so Tristan gets an idea of, oh, I've got a group of people who actually are interested in this. Or if you have questions, not that you have to lead the group, but you might lead kind of this initial gathering would be good. Any other questions? Okay, you all know that you're free to ask questions at this meeting again next year, but not before. So, at any point, I'd love to sit down with coffee or lunch. I love you all. Let's move into the future and figure out what this looks like together. And so thank you for your time, your energy, and if you got any other questions, you can come up and talk to me, all right? All right, we'll see you guys next week.